Hello guys and welcome to JavaScript Made Simple, where we simplify JavaScript for you. In this video, we're going to be looking at JavaScript DOM selectors. By the end of this video, you will know how to select elements from the DOM and manipulate them. So if you're ready to get started, leave a like, and if you learned something from this video, consider subscribing. Well, let's get started. So as you can see, I have an empty folder open in VS Code, and I am just going to create two files, index.html and script.js. Of course, you can call these two files anything you'd like. So in the HTML file, I'm gonna generate an empty boilerplate template using exclamation enter, and I'm gonna give this a title of JS made simple. And in the body, we're just gonna have very minimal HTML. I'm just gonna have an h1 tag, and in here I'm just gonna insert JavaScript made simple, and we are going to have an unordered list with the ID of list, and I'm using Emmet, so I can just use the hash symbol followed by the ID I would like to give the element. Now I would like to also have a list item with the class of list item, and I want to have 5 of these, and using Emmet I can simply use the multiply symbol followed by the amount of that element that I want. In this case, I want 5 list items. So if I click enter, you will see it will give me 5 list items. So in here, I'm just gonna insert list item 1, and I'm gonna copy this down into each list item. Maybe list item 2, list item 3, list item 4, and lastly list item 5. And with that, we have our basic HTML. So in JavaScript, we have multiple element selectors and single element selectors. Single element selectors are used to select single elements from your HTML. So let's look at that. Alright, so the first single element selector we're going to be looking at is the .getElementById selector. These are methods of the document object, and of course a method is simply just a function within an object. So let us initialize an empty variable called item, because we are going to be resetting this variable multiple times throughout the script, and we are going to set item equal to document dot get element by ID, and the element that we want to select by its ID is this list over here, because it has an ID of list. So let's insert list here, and let's log this out onto the console to see what we get. And if we open this in our browser and we inspect, go to the console. Oh, it's not logging out. Oh, we forgot to do the most important thing, which is to link our HTML to our JavaScript. This is going to be script.js. Now let's look at it, and you'll see we get the list. So we just selected the list by its ID. Now there is a much more flexible and useful selector, more powerful too, and that is the document.querySelector method. This method enables you to select an element by its ID, class, or tag name. So let's say we want to select this h1 over here, which doesn't have a class or ID on it. We could simply select it by its tag name by simply inserting h1. So if we save that and go into the console, you will see we get the tag. Now we can also select elements by their class. So if we had to give this h1 a class of heading, we could select that by its class using the query selector method. Now it's important to note that when selecting an element by its class, you should use a dot symbol and followed by the class. So in this case it's going to be heading. So let's go into our browser and see what we get, and we get the heading. Now you can also select elements by their ID. So let's select the list by its ID, and it's important to note that when selecting an element by its ID, it must be preceded by this hash symbol right here. And if we go into our script, you will see that you get the unordered list. Now these two methods are used to select single elements from the DOM. It is important to note that if you are selecting an element that appears multiple times in your HTML, it will select the first appearance of that element. So for example, in our HTML we have these 5 list items over here. If we were to select list item, and as you can see there's multiple list items, it will select only the first one. So let me show you this. Let's copy this down and let us select the list item, save that. Let's see what we get in our browser, and you will see that we get list item 1. So it will select the first appearance of that in your HTML. So these are single element selectors. Alright guys, so now let's look at multiple element selectors. Multiple element selectors allow you to select multiple elements from the DOM. This will be returned to you in either an HTML collection or a node list. An HTML collection and node list are similar to arrays but are different in certain aspects. So let's take a look at this. First, I just want to comment out this console log because we are done with single element selectors. Now, there are multiple methods which JavaScript offers you to select multiple elements from the DOM. So let us just initialize an empty variable called items because we will be resetting this variable multiple times. And let's first look at get elements by class name. So we are going to say document dot get elements by class name. And if you guys remember, we have an unordered list with 5 list items inside, and each list item has a class of list-item. So let's select all of these. So in here we are simply going to say list-item. Now let's log this out to see what we get. Items. And if you go into the console, you will see we get an HTML collection with all 5 list items. Now this may look like an array, but it is not, because we cannot loop through it using array methods like for each. We would have to first convert it to an array before looping through it. Now we can access individual items from this HTML collection using indexing, using array indexing. So if we wanted to select the third item in the HTML collection, we could use array indexing for that. And as you can see, we get the third item. So let's look at another method which the DOM offers us for selecting elements by their tag name. So let's say document dot get elements by tag name, and let's get every li in our HTML. If we save that and go into our script, you will see that we get an HTML collection with all 5 list items. And again, we can use array indexing to access individual items from the HTML collection, but we cannot loop through it. Now, JavaScript offers us a more powerful and more dynamic method, which is the document.querySelectorAll method. This method doesn't return an HTML collection but a node list, and I'll explain to you the differences in just a moment. But let's just see it in action. So let's say document.querySelector all, and this works in a very similar way to the document.querySelector method. If we were to select a class, if we were to select every element by its class, we would insert a dot followed by the class. If we were to select all elements by their ID, we would insert a hash symbol. Or if we were to select all elements by their tag name, we would just insert the tag name like this. So as you can see, the query selector all method offers you an all-inclusive way to select anything from the DOM. But in this case, we just want to select the list item, and let's save that. And as you can see, we get a node list, not an HTML collection. Now a node list is different from an HTML collection, as you can select multiple elements from the DOM, and you can also loop through it using array methods such as for each without needing to convert it to an array. These are all the methods which you can use to select elements from your HTML. Now as a bonus, I just want to show you how to loop through HTML collections and node lists. So I first want to comment all of these out because we no longer need it, and I'm just going to leave this items variable because we'll still be using it, and I'm just going to add a comment here, and let us say document dot get elements by class name, and we want to get every element with the class of list item. So we are selecting our 5 list items. Now if you remember, this is gonna return an HTML collection. So to loop through it using higher order array methods, we can first convert it to an array, and we can do that by using the array.from method. So let's create a new variable called items array, or ARR for short, and we are going to set this to array.from, and we are going to insert items into here. So what this does is it converts this HTML collection into an array and stores it into this items array variable. So now that we have the HTML collection in the form of an array, we can loop through it using a .for each loop. So let's say items array .for each, and for each item we just want to log out the item. So if we go into our browser, into the console, you will see we get each item logged out individually, and we can also log out the inner text of this. So we can say that inner text, and you'll see we get each item's text logged out individually. Now you don't have to convert the HTML collection to an array. You don't have to convert a node list to an array. You can just loop through a node list directly. So let us set items equal document.querySelector all, because querySelector all returns a node list, and in the querySelector all we want to select every element with the class of list item. Now we don't have to convert this to an array, we can loop through it directly. So we can say items dot for each item, we can just console.log each items in a text, and if we save that, you will see we get each item's text logged out onto the console. So that is how you loop through elements. That is how you loop through HTML collections and node lists.
Alright guys, with that said, if you would like to learn more about JavaScript, or you would like to have a useful reference and guide right by your side, then I suggest you get my book JavaScript Made Simple for Absolutely Everybody, which teaches you the fundamentals of JavaScript and goes deeper into much complex topics and teaches it to you in a very simple and easy to understand manner. And if you've enjoyed this video and learned a lot, then consider subscribing and leaving a like. Thank you. This has been JavaScript Made Simple.